Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new edition of KerVAM, a bonus episode. We're still going to call it episode 11, the next one, but it is kind of a bonus edition because quite slightly unluckily and ironically, I posted the last episode of KerVAM on the day that season 17 was announced. We recorded it a couple of days before, but I actually posted it literally like 2 hours after they announced season 17. So sorry you guys didn't get to hear about season 17 in the previous podcast, but that's why we're here for this one. We're going to have a quick little sort of bonus podcast, slightly shorter than normal, where we're just going to chat about season 17, about the box set, about, you know, what we're excited for based on what they've announced for it, and yeah, our general hopes for season 17 and the Blu-ray. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about Doctor Who Flux, because that has also been the big announcement of the week. Of course, as always, I am joined by Ryan and Charlie. Guys, how are you getting on?
It has been really good. Very exciting considering this week we've had a lot of Doctor Who news. So it's definitely been, they've definitely built up more Doctor Who as it's going along. Is that right, Charlie?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited for the season 17 box set. Even if it isn't the best season, it should still be quite nice to get another set. And obviously, Doctor Who Flux, it's sort of built up my excitement for Series 13 somewhat.
Indeed, yes. Well, we'll discuss more of it later on about our levels of excitement for Series 13. Or is it called Flux? I don't know what we're going to call it now. I guess maybe we're going to call it Flux. We'll chat about that later. First, of course, we're going to be talking about season 17. Now, this is a box set that we discussed, I think, a couple of episodes ago. Like, it's been a few weeks since that we've kind of known that it was strongly rumoured to be season 17. And then, of course, on Thursday afternoon, in the classic 3 p.m. announcement slot on Twitter, they announced that the season 17 Blu-ray would be coming on, as we predicted as well, the 13th of December of this year. So we've only got a couple of months to wait, which is really exciting because I feel like, well, with season 24, I'm pretty sure, didn't they announce it in like January for like a June release? I think it was something like, it was a long way in advance. So as much as it's been a long wait for another trailer, it's really nice that we haven't got very long to wait to actually get the box set, albeit that depends on whether they actually produce it on deadline for release date, and we've seen that, you know, being pushed back a few times in the past. So I'm guessing you guys managed to watch the trailer when it first came out. What was your takeaways from the little, you know, trailer that brought back the Destiny of the Daleks Davros, played by David Goodison? Ryan, what was when you first saw the trailer, what did you think?
It actually, even though I'm pretty sure we'll discuss this a bit later, but even though I'm not a huge fan of Destiny of the Daleks, seeing this specially shot trailer with Davros, it was really well done. I mean, Davros is, of course, my favourite Doctor Who enemy of all time, and so getting the chance to have a trailer shot specifically around him did actually get me really excited. And hearing David Goodison, it's definitely done. It's clear he's doing a much better vocal, more better performance than he did in Destiny, because in Destiny he was, I mean, it's not his fault. I think he just got too encumbered by a mask which didn't really fit him very popularly, and he was in a chair which didn't completely fit him entirely. So I think he was encumbered in that story. But seeing him with the modulation and everything, it sounded like Davros, and it's like, wow, this is a really good trailer that really builds up hype for a story which admittedly isn't all that amazing, but, you know, it's still a great trailer nonetheless.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, I think it wasn't quite maybe on the level of the season 24 trailer, for example, where we had that like 8-minute almost like mini episode with them kind of going through all the villains of the season with Sylvester and Bonnie Langford and everything. Like, I'm not saying it was bad. It was still, you know, a fun little moment. As you say, it was great to see the David Goodison Davros back for a little teaser clip. But I felt like it wasn't, you know, quite as ambitious maybe as some of the previous ones. But then I don't think everyone needs to be quite to that extent. Charlie, did you have similar feelings on the trailer when you got to see it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I wasn't as surprised as I was for when the season 24 box set was announced, because, you know, we were all expecting it. It was kind of obvious. But it was nice to see it. The cover looks fantastic. I do actually really like just seeing what it will look like. And generally, like, I'm always very surprised as to how well acted and directed these little things are, considering that they're just, you know, little trailers. They don't really have to do them, but they do, and they do them really well, which I'm quite happy about. And yeah, I'm really excited for the special features. Yeah, seeing David Goodison as Davros again is pretty great. Yeah, and even though it's not the best season, I am still really looking forward to it, mostly because of the VAM. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I look forward to every Blu-ray release. I feel like we probably all look forward to every single Blu-ray, even if it's for a season that we don't like. We discussed it before, but let's have a quick little chat about the season of season 17 before we discuss the van. So there's one obviously good story in this season, which is City of Death. I think we all agree City of Death is pretty good. That's a top tier Doctor Who episode. But outside of that, now, how do we look at the rest? I'm Charlie. I believe you actually don't dislike season 17 that much. Like, are you more of a kind of advocate for it than maybe you are, Ryan?
I'd say I don't hate it, but I can't exactly say I like it. Like, it's definitely in the bottom third of classic Doctor Who seasons, but only just.
Wow.
You know, I feel that there's worse Tom Baker seasons. Personally, I prefer it to season 18.
Wow.
I feel I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the Graham Williams era. I just really do enjoy it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. This is definitely the weakest of that, in my opinion. But the stories, yeah, there is Creature from the Pit and Horns of Nymon, but I don't mind Destiny of the Daleks that much. City of Death is obviously fantastic, and Nightmare of Eden is there. You know, I just don't think it's that bad.
Yeah, I mean, I also might agree that I enjoy the season more than season 18, which I feel like is slightly controversial. I think the thing is, season 18 is just kind of very serious, full of ridiculous sciencey techno babble that Christopher Hamilton Bidmead in all his glory decided that he wanted to fill the show with. Whereas season 17 is actually just quite funny. Maybe it's not always funny for the reason the writers intended. I think maybe I enjoy it more for the things that the writers didn't intend to be funny, but actually are really funny, aka the whole of the Horns of Nymon, Erato from The Creature from the Pit, various bits of Nightmare of Eden, some of the acting and things in Nightmare of Eden, and the mandrels, and yeah. Ryan, season 17. Take it away.
Oh boy, here we go. Boy, where do I even start? Well, firstly, a little bit of a controversy. I slightly prefer season 18 a bit more to this because it's a bit more of a competent season than say season 17. I mean,
yeah.
As I said, City of Death and to a certain extent Sharda are the most competent stories of this season, whereas the rest is laughably shoddy even by that era standards. I mean, I do enjoy it. I do get a laugh at it, but it is mostly for the wrong reasons, given the varied levels of quality. I mean, Destiny of the Daleks, the very first few minutes of Destiny, I think perfectly sets the tone for what to expect for the rest of the season. You have K9 suddenly having laryngitis for some strange, bizarre reason. Even Tom Baker himself says, how can a robot catch laryngitis? I mean, what do you need it for? It's like, even he's pointing out just how ridiculous.
Yeah, this script is nonsense.
Yeah. Then Lala Ward just suddenly comes on. It's like, I'm the new Romana now. And just like, what? And it's the most weirdest regeneration ever. And then to crown it all off, they look to see where they are. The TARDIS screen comes on to show what it's Scarra. And the Tom Baker just goes, oh, look, rocks, and just closes the windows like, yeah, seen it, done that. I think it just perfectly sets what's going to happen for the rest of the season. I mean, you had tatty Daleks, ridiculous-looking Movellans, Davros especially, who's meant to be the most evil man in the universe, and yet he's looking so incredibly tattered. He's jiggling up and down like as if he's a rubber duck in a bathtub, and Tom Baker pushing him about like he's a wheelie bin, and it's just so, I can't take it seriously because it's like, and the bit where he's pushing him back, there's even comedy music played over it, and it's just like, am I supposed to be taking this seriously? And the minute Davros comes back at the beginning of part 3, the first thing Tom Baker does is hand him a jelly baby. There's no like big grandiose like confrontation. It's just half offering a jelly baby, which that might have something to do with Douglas Adams. I don't know.
Wow, indeed.
And I've already said my piece about Creature from the Pit. I mean,
indeed,
I'm pretty ad nauseum about it. All I can say is just, well, Erato. What else is there to say?
That's it, yeah. It really is, yeah.
Nightmare of Eden. as Charlie perfectly says, it's just there. That's all Nightmare of Eden is. I mean, I think the behind the scenes of Nightmare of Eden is more fascinating than the story itself because of how troubled of a production it was, and how much the Tom Baker, and there was a shift halfway through with different directors and all sorts. And then I think to crown all off, I said Horns of Nimon is just utterly ridiculous. I mean, with Graham Crowden going, Lord Nimon, constantly, and my dreams of conquest, and you meddlesome hussy, and all that, and the Nimon looking the way they do, and Tom Baker somehow just giving K9 the kiss of life for some reason in part one. And then I think what perfectly sums it up is that when I was watching this for the first time, when I was going through all of classic Doctor Who, at the end of part one, where there's that cliffhanger where the planet is hurtling towards them and it looks like a round dog biscuit, and Tom Baker just looks at K9 and just goes, "It's coming right for us," and he's clutching his head in mock terror. I remember taking a deep sigh and just saying, well, if the fate of the universe is in the hands of these buggers, then God help us.
Well, indeed,
I think that's what I knew. I think the warning signs were there that it was the end of Tom's run. I think that the signs were there and that it was reaching its ending point. But overall, even though, as I said, most of the stories aren't that good, I still get a kick out of watching them. But I think if you watch this, not as your traditional, legit Doctor Who season, but a season about this strange, weird, eccentric, middle-aged entertainer who can somehow travel through time and space and thinks he's the savior of the universe, it's just the most brilliant thing imaginable.
Yeah, it's quite an experience in season 17. I think that in some ways it's summed up by that scene in, I don't know, is it episode 2 or episode 3 of Horns of Nimon, where, well, clearly Tom Baker doesn't like the script very much, and a lot of his scenes are written doing not very much, and we get, I think, probably one of maybe this is hyperbole, the silliest scene in Doctor Who I've ever seen, when he's in the TARDIS and he starts rattling around with these comedy sound effects playing in the background of, with him trying to do boring things in the TARDIS, and we're suddenly playing in comedic sound effects. He's talking to camera. It's just bizarre. It's just so. It's clearly he's just got so bored in rehearsals that he's like, how on earth, I'm just going to do what I like to jazz this up. I don't even care anymore. Like, this is so terrible. I'm just going to jazz this up myself.
This was the point where Tom Baker's egomania was starting to reach peak levels. I think both the combination of him and Douglas Adams, it was a double-edged sword. When it works, it really works, like in City of Death. But for the rest, and even to an extent, Sharda, and I mean that's mainly because Douglas is writing it. But everywhere, the rest of the time, Tom Baker's just a comedian for the rest of it. He's just and that's just allowed to do whatever he wants. And maybe that's why in season 18, when it was taken a bit more serious again, even despite there being a lot of technobabble, the fact that he was taking it so a bit more seriously again, and he was more dark and more edgier, I welcome that, like rain in the desert. It was like, after the whole increasing silliness throughout and goofiness throughout the Graham Williams period, it was a bit of a breath of fresh air to go back to something a bit more serious in season 18, despite there being tons of expository technobabble.
Yeah, it clearly had gone too far by season 17, and they need to do something about it. And season 18 is definitely that culture change for the show, that it needed to get back to something that you could frankly take a bit more seriously with Doctor Who. And so as we transition onto the VAM of this, first interesting thing to note, you talked about, Ryan, about the production problems of Nightmare of Eden. I was reading on Twitter the other day that some of the people who used to work on the DVD range and now work on the Blu-ray range, I think someone tweeted asking why there isn't a making of Nightmare of Eden on this Blu-ray release. I don't think there was a proper making. It was like a featurette, but there wasn't a proper making of on the original one. And they basically just said that everybody who worked on it refused to come and talk about it. Clearly, it was so like they couldn't get anybody to come and do it. Sometimes the problem is they've all died, but on this occasion, there's people out there, just no one would talk to them, because clearly it was such a mess in production that nobody wanted to, actually discuss it. So I thought that was quite an interesting one. But we do get...
That didn't surprise me. That did not surprise me at all. Because and in a way, that featurette on Nightmare of Eden, I think kind of perfectly sums it all up, really, just how messed up the production was.
Indeed, yeah, it really was a shambles, wasn't it? And I'm sure one day we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But yeah, so this Blu-ray, let's run through quickly some of the van we've got. We've got a new making of documentary for Destiny of the Daleks. Did it have a making of? I don't think it did. Did it have not have a proper making of it? It had like some interview with the director or something, I think, wasn't it? I remember the director chap because it was the only Doctor Who we ever did. I can't remember his name. But I remember there being that, but I don't think there was a proper making of. So it's really nice to actually have that for a story that maybe isn't that great, but I think is still interesting from a production standpoint. And some sort of new documentary on the creature from the pit. It doesn't say a making of, so I'm assuming it's something shorter than that, but I don't think there was a proper making of in the first place, so I guess it's just a bit more behind the scenes stuff. Then alongside that, we've also got a brand new interview with Tom Baker, which is cool, but also seems slightly kind of random because it doesn't really seem to talk anything about how, it's his perspective on season 17 or whatever. It seems to just be, here's an interview with Tom Baker that we filmed recently, which I'm sure is going to be great because it's Tom, but also I'm not quite sure like what the angle's going to be on that kind of interview chat. Is it just going to be his thoughts on life at 80 something, however old he is, or I don't know. We'll see. Then one of the more interesting things I think is a Douglas Adams tribute, because I don't feel like Douglas Adams has been that well covered in the DVD and Blu-ray range so far. Unfortunately, a lot of it is, of course, because he passed away a long time ago, and so there's not that many interviews with him. But I think it'll be so nice to give him a proper documentary looking at his life, looking at his work on Doctor Who, obviously looking at Hitchhikers as well, because that's frankly what he's more famous for than Doctor Who. So I'm hoping that will be one of the real highlights of the box set when we come to it for season 17.
Douglas Adams, I mean, even though as a script editor he perhaps isn't that solid as a writer, I think he produces some brilliant ideas for Doctor Who. I mean, you look at his 3 scripts, they're just full of crazy imagination, and I have a good, strong feeling this documentary, as you said, might be the real highlight of this set. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I'm certainly very hopeful for it. And then we've got the new In Conversation conversation, obviously, hence calling Conversation with Matthew Sweet, where interestingly they've gone for Bob Baker, which I thought was quite an interesting choice. He wrote, well, in this season, Nightmare of Eden, but slightly more famous stories outside of that, like The Three Doctors, among others. And The Claws of Axos, and I don't know what else has he written, guys? Throw some at me. I can't actually remember.
Armageddon Factor, Invasion of Time.
Yes. I can't remember any more than that. He's definitely done more. I'm going to have to Google it, aren't I?
I think he might have done I think he might have done Claws of Axos. I think that he might have. I know he did The Invisible Enemy because he was the one who co-created K9, and that was one of the stories. So he did these K9's first story, but I can't remember much more than that.
I've found what he's done. He's done Claws of Axos, Mutants, Three Doctors, Sontaran Experiment, Hand of Fear, Invisible Enemy, Underworld, Armageddon Factor, and Nightmare of Eden.
I think it's fair to say that's a mixed bunch.
Yeah.
You've got good ones, like The Three Doctors is pretty good. Claws of Axos is also a pretty solid story. Hand of Fear is not that bad, but then you've also got Underworld, Armageddon Factor, Nightmare of Eden. It's not a great run for your final 3 stories as well, is it?
No.
But that's just. But it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. To be fair, I'm looking forward to hearing. And obviously he's going to probably talk about Wallace and Gromit as well, because that was he was one of the big things behind that as well, which I think is quite interesting. We got Behind the Sofa, and remarkably, there is no Janet Fielding or Sarah Sutton on Behind the Sofa this time round. I think it's only the second one they haven't been on out of 10 now, or maybe third one, something like that. They've certainly been on most of them. So we've got Colin Baker. Was it Colin Baker and Matthew Waterhouse? Were they together? I think, weren't they? And then Katie Manning and Nicola Bryant, which I also think is a great combination. And then June Hudson, Graham Harper, and Matt Irvine. Now, I'm really looking forward to hearing what Graham Harper has to say. I think it's going to be fascinating to hear what he's, having worked on the new show, but this was his time back on the old show. I think it's really, really interesting to just hear his perspective on this. I think that'll be really, really fun. And getting Colin's take on it as well. Colin reacting to this stuff, I think is going to be quite fun. Don't you guys agree?
Yeah, I think these could be the best Behind the Sofas ever. I think, even though I'm still surprised that Janet Fielding and Sarah Sutton aren't on, because I think this would have been the right material for them. But anyway, what we've got as a guest line, I think is is not that bad, because again, just seeing the trailer, just seeing the previews, and just seeing their reactions to it, I think we're going to be in for an absolute blast with them watching. I mean, we could clearly see Matthew Waterhouse's reaction to possibly Arato showing up.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
I see everyone talk about that.
I feel the most, like, the part I'm looking forward to most about this entire box set is probably Colin Baker and Matthew Waterhouse reacting to basically all of Creature from the Pit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the highlights of the Blu-ray range, to be honest with you. I don't think it's going to get much better than that. And just seeing them all react to Graham Crowden in The Horns of Nimon, I think is going to be also a lot of fun. So that's definitely something to look forward to. We've also got a Lad Award interview, which looked like an archive interview, which slightly confused me. It looked like it was actually the interview they used when they did the documentaries on the DVDs back in like the late 2000s. Just for some reason they're kind of putting it all together, because they've definitely recorded a recent interview with her for the Douglas Adams tribute, but I don't think this is a recent interview. I think this is from like 2007, 2008. Just they never put it all together in one package. I don't know, did you guys get the same impression from the trailer?
Yeah, I think I got that. I think when they did a Graham Williams documentary for I believe the Key to Time box set.
Yeah, sounds about right.
There were snippets of that in it. So I imagine this is probably the full feature-length interview of that. Just basically unedited, and it's just all in its entirety.
Indeed. And, well, the other big thing, I feel like, that having followed, Gallifrey-based forums for a very, very long time, one of the biggest topics of conversation for the last 3 years of the Blu-ray range was, on Season 17, A, will there be Sharda? And B, will we get an episodic Sharda? Of course, the answer is yes, we do have a six-part version of Sharda. So, Charlie, are you bothered? Are you excited about a 6-episode version of Sharda? Or will you stick to the Omnibus 2017 version? I don't know. What's your plan?
I am actually, I'm really happy that they're releasing it in an episodic format. I do like how they released it as this 2.5 hour long film. But I think you said this in the Sharda, special pod that we did a few months ago. It feels very difficult to just stop somewhere because it's all, stitched together. Then it feels hard to just stop somewhere and then carry on. Whereas if we've got episodes, just 2 episodes, next day another 2, next day another 2, it just makes it a lot easier to watch.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be interesting how they edit it all together. I mean, it's a shame that our Sharda podcast is out of date after just a couple of months. Of course they had to give us one more version of Sharda. It's not like when you have about 6 or 7 already. Let's add another one into the mix. Who, can't complain.
When I heard the news, I was just like, of course, after we did our Sharda episode, of course they had to release the definitive version. I mean, I had a good, strong feeling Sharda was going to get included in the set because it's definitely part of Season 17, but of course, they had to do another version. I think they must have listened to our podcast and just like, okay, what can we do to kind of mess things up? Let's do another definitive version.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I guess we had to expect they were going to do it, didn't we, ultimately? But, I'm sure I will, at the very least, check out the cliffhangers just to see how they did that bit. And to be fair, they did say, I have read some stuff that it has been generally updated a little bit, just in some tidying up of some of the animation where it's a bit rough around the edges and things at the time because of time and budget and whatever, I think. So it will be a slight improvement all round, but clearly the main thing will just be there's cliffhangers, the music's slightly edited to be able to fit in cliffhangers. And I'll be intrigued to see at what points in the story they decide to go for the cliffhangers as well. Because I think there was some scripts at some point that had cliffhangers in them, but I'll be interested to see exactly where they sort of choose those moments for it, because I feel like when you watched the full version, it wasn't like there was an obvious moment where, there should have been a cliffhanger there. So I think it'll be quite interesting, really. And then the last few things, we've got new audio commentaries on Destiny of the Daleks and City of Death. Tom Baker's doing Destiny of the Daleks, which will be fun. Just him and Matthew Sweet talking about Destiny of the Daleks. I think that's going to be quite nice. And then Lala Ward and Catherine Schell on City of Death as well. I think that was recorded like 3 years ago now, from what I remember. But it's good to have it, if nothing else, even if it's a little bit out of date already. And then kind of the final, there's special effects on Nightmare of Eden. That's the story. I guess they were struggling for stories that needed special effects because there's not really that much in this season. I can't imagine that's going to make me super much more excited for Nightmare of Eden, but, there we go. They've decided to do it. And then to top it off, we've got the 5.1 surround soundtracks on Destiny of the Daleks and Shada. I think Shada already had it on the Blu-ray release, but that's ported over, and presumably with the edited music, there'll be a version of that on there alongside a nice one for Destiny. I personally really enjoy the 5.1 soundtracks. I think they can make a big difference to it. So obviously you've got all of the previously released special features and a few bit of convention footage, and all the classic stuff, the production notes and production subtitles and all the PDF files and things. So it looks like another great box set to me. What are you, Charlie? What are you most excited about based on what you've seen? If there's one piece of one documentary, one thing, what would you say you're most looking forward to apart from Creature from the Pit behind the sofa?
Probably the Douglas Adams documentary, if I'm being honest. I'm just really excited for it. Although his era, as script editor, was a bit rough around the edges, I do generally enjoy it, and I'm a huge fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and that. So it should be really good to have a sort of documentary on him, because we've got loads of documentaries about the others, but this whole era, really, the Williams era, seems to have been overlooked quite a bit. So I'm also glad that they're doing a collection box set on it. So yeah, probably the Douglas Adams documentary.
Yeah, exactly. What about you, Ryan? Would you say it's the same, or is there another feature that you're particularly excited for?
I would agree the same with Charlie. I think the Douglas Adams documentary, I think, is definitely going to be the highlight of this set, absolutely, because as I said, I think Douglas Adams has such a very clear, vivid, creative imagination, and so the chance to have a sort of retrospective documentary is definitely well earned. And interestingly enough, I noticed when looking through the list, the Paul McGann Shada isn't included.
Indeed.
So it seems like maybe my hunch about there may be a Wilderness Years box that might be true if they're saving all the Paul McGann stuff for that set. So
yes, I did notice it. Yeah, it did seem very interesting that they decided to leave the Paul McGann version out. I'm sure they could have made the disc space if they wanted to include it. So I think, as you say, Ryan, you could be onto something there. Even if maybe it's not officially commissioned yet, I feel like they're planning for a Wilderness Years box set. There's just so much content that it would make complete sense to do it. Only time will tell, but I'm pretty optimistic there will be. So that's season 17, which is released on the 13th of December. So we've only got a couple of months to wait until that. And of course, close to the time, we'll talk more about it and we'll give you guys the lowdown on it. Once it's released, we'll watch all those documentaries and have a little chat about them probably early in the new year, I imagine, or maybe just before Christmas. We'll see. If we've got the time or if they actually release it on time. But of course, just quickly, we've got about 10 minutes left. And so the other big news of the week, of course, announced over the weekend was Doctor Who Series 13, or Doctor Who Flux, is finally back on the 31st of October, so we've got less than 3 weeks to wait until the new series of Doctor Who. It's been a slightly odd couple of days as a Doctor Who fan. We spent 24 hours without Doctor Who as a social media presence, which ultimately seems to have been for no reason at all. I don't know. Have you guys worked out why? They changed their logo, and then they posted the new promo pics and the likes. But that seemed to me to be about it. So I was slightly confused by that. I don't know, Charlie, what's your take been on the Doctor Who's marketing strategy over the last few days?
If I'm being honest, I haven't actually had the opportunity to follow it a whole lot because I've been on holiday this weekend. So it's not been a great time for things to be announced. And I'm like, oh no, I can't make videos on these. What am I going to do? I'll probably make them tomorrow or something. But it's been a bit strange because I haven't really had time to actually properly look into Doctor Who socials and all, YouTube Doctor Who channels I follow. So I've just been sort of looking at my YouTube notifications like, what's this? Doctor Who Flux? Social medias are down. It's just been very hectic. And it was pretty obvious that it was building up to some sort of trailer or release date or something. And I'm glad we have one now.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's certainly good news. Ryan, we finally got that little teaser clip. Well, not even clip, just that teaser on Saturday evening where we saw Jodie for 20 seconds and she talked to us about the fact that monsters are returning. I don't know. Does it get you excited about the series?
I'm really sorry to say that I still can't muster up the excitement. I mean, to be honest, I feel like there's been very little marketing, and I just feel like the biggest marketing we practically got was the announcement that Chibnall and Whittaker were leaving. That's probably been the only real big announcement they did about this season. Yes, they announced Grey Worm from Game of Thrones is coming back. But apart from that, it feels like there hasn't been that much to it. And the fact that Russell was announced as the returning showrunner only a few weeks before this season, it feels like this season has been thrown under a bus in a certain way, because it's just like, who's really going to pay attention now? From what I've seen on the social media, it feels like more people are excited about what's coming next than they are right now. And it just feels like I actually feel a little bit sorry for Chibnall and Whittaker and all the people who have worked on this season, because it's like they've worked so hard, especially during during pandemic, and it kind of feels like they've been left in the dust. And that even when they said they're going to be a season storyline, I just can't muster up the excitement for it. And with the announcement that when it's all about the Flux and this is going to be like the season arc, I mean, like, does a quest really that work in Doctor Who? I mean, they did it with the Key to Time, and but even then with the Key to Time, it just feels like, okay, we got the bit. Let's mainly concentrate on the Adventures. It was more about the Adventures than it was collecting the key. And then, of course, they did a quick little wrap up at the very end of that season. And Trial of a Time Lord, well, I have my grievances with that. I don't think it was
yeah, and we'll discuss that next week. Yeah,
but because of I feel like the bar's been set pretty low in terms of quest storylines for Doctor Who. I just can't see how this is going to do that much improvement. I mean, I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I just can't really muster up the enthusiasm, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I think the idea is good. I think that Doctor Who Flux has potential. I mean, it's a bit of it's an unusual name. It's a bit of a Chibnall name, like the Ux from Battle of Ranskorav Kolos. I mean, it just feels like although it is a real word, it feels like a very Chris Chibnall-y word to choose. So I'm sure he came up with that idea. But I think it's just going to be all about the execution. Like, as you say, a quest plotline for a series of Doctor Who, it could work, but it also might not. And I really hope it does. I really want the Chibnall and Whittaker era to go out on a high, for it to not end on a whimper, for people to actually get to the end of it and feel like, sure, yeah, maybe we were more excited for Russell T Davies Doctor Who, but actually right now we're really enjoying this series of Doctor Who. That's what I hope comes out of it, but I just don't think we can have any real confidence in that based on what we've seen so far in this era. And as we say, the marketing has just been a bit bizarre. Like, we got this teaser, but we still don't actually have any footage from any of the episodes. Like, they managed to do a teaser where they said the Centaurans are coming back, the Weeping Angels are coming back, and something called the Ravagers, which might be from Christopher Eccleston's Big Finish, but we don't even know. And then didn't actually show us anything. It was just bizarre.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like the marketing has been pretty much non-existent. I mean, I feel like the marketing for the entire Chibnall era has been diminishing less and less as each season has gone on. It's like, I feel like even the BBC are not really bothered about Chibnall anymore. I think they're more focused on what's coming after. Even the BBC are just like, we want to get to the next year as soon as possible.
Yeah, indeed. Like, I can kind of understand the idea of waiting until closer to the time to really go heavy on the marketing. Like, that is fairly standard for TV programs, apart from Doctor Who nowadays, is you don't announce the release date, 3 months before it happens. For a lot of sort of standard BBC dramas. I'm not saying Doctor Who is, but for more classic programs. And so I can kind of understand that, but it also feels like they're not going massive on the marketing. Maybe that will come in the next week. But so far, I don't feel like we've got that much, apart from a name and a release date. Can I get excited about a release date and a name? Not really. I don't know, Charlie. When you saw the teaser, because I assume you got to see the actual teaser itself. Did it bring excitement for Series 13 for you?
Kind of. I mean, it's quite nice that they've actually properly name-dropped Sontarans and Weeping Angels and whatever on earth Ravagers are. So it is quite nice that they're properly confirmed, even though they were basically confirmed before. And the whole concept of Flux, it's a nice sort of Back to the Future reference, if it is one. But like Ryan said, I want to get excited for Series 13, well, Flux or whatever, but I just can't really. I just don't think 11 and 12 were all that great, as in the seasons, not the Doctors. They were fantastic. But my friends, some of them are like fans of Doctor Who. They're not exactly Whovians as such. They probably don't know what like Big Finish and the collection ranges, but they watch Doctor Who. If they didn't know that the new season was arriving soon, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And I think that's the fundamental problem ultimately, isn't it? That just the show hasn't been talked about for so long that they've got to go really hard on the marketing. Hopefully the idea will work, and it'll be, if we tell people just before, then they'll remember, oh, it's happening in a couple of weeks, okay, I'll watch it. But also maybe it's not enough time. I don't know, we shall see. But as much as we're not that excited about Series 13, we're also going to be doing weekly podcasts about Series 13. We thought, we've got a podcast, we'll tie it into the Blu-ray somehow. But we will talk about every episode of Series 13 in weekly podcasts. So keep a lookout for that from the 31st of October onwards. Not quite sure what day of the week, but they will come at some point during that week. I think that's just about all we have time for in this special bonus edition of KerVAM. But we'll be back again next week for a proper episode to discuss season 23, because the box set, the sort of re-release of the box set came very recently. And we'll be, just breaking that down, discussing all features on it if people are interested to get it as well. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this edition of KerVAM. We'll be back next week to discuss season 23. So see you then, and goodbye for now.